welcome to this edition of the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show. Well, you know, it's been said that you don't know what you don't know. And it's kind of a loaded sentence. But I think when we talk about critical race theory, probably applies. You don't know what you don't know. However, after today, hopefully some of that changes. Please welcome my guest. Dr. Epryl King is the president of Raising Achievement in Monroeville and Pitcairn. She is an educator. She is community-minded. She wants to make a difference, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. King.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I say you don't know what you don't know. And I mentioned to you before we even started recording this show that I don't know that all of us fully understand what critical race theory is all about. Can you explain it to us?
Absolutely. So just to kind of help break it down, I think the word theory needs to be defined. I think a lot of people don't understand what theory is.
Okay.
So, you know, you look at different theories, you've got theory of relativity, you've got constructivism. These are all names for different theories, maybe in different areas. Positivism is in the medical practice field. And, you know, these are things that just inform our teaching. So if you look at critical theory was something that came about to help people break things down, understanding that people have differences and that they share experiences based on those differences. Mm-hmm. And in critical race theory, they say that people share experiences based on their race. And so critical race theory, how do we look at that is how it helps us to look at how does race interact with policies and practices in the legal realm? It had to do with how does it impact, legal outcomes, and in education outcomes. So critical race theory, how do we look at our students' outcomes based on because obviously over the since 2001, we've seen nothing but disaggregated scores based on race when it comes to state standardized tests. So this moved into the education realm to help us understand how the experiences of our kids based on their race are different, and then how to use that knowledge to make education more meaningful and relevant to them.
So when you say help us understand, educators.
Yes.
See, I think that's important to stress, because so many people have this perception that this is something targeted specifically at their child, and that their child is going to be traumatized by this. But this is really for educators and how they approach the classroom.
Yes. And I think that's the key. People don't understand. It's theory that informs how we do what we do. More specifically, critical race theory informed multicultural education with James Banks, and now culturally responsive teaching with Gloria Ladson-Billings and Geneva Gay, and lots of people who came together and said, we recognize a problem, what can we do to solve it? And the problem is inequitable outcomes in education for students of color. Specifically, our Blacks, our Hispanics, our Native Americans, right? So, so you can kind of look at it this way. I try to help people understand it by male and female first. Let's just take those two of the many genders, okay? So male and female, how did males experience life? What was their lived experience over the 200 years? Let's just say the last 200 years. How did females experience education over the last 200-300 years? Well, one thing that's for certain is that things were inequitable at one point for men and women. We talk about that in the STEM fields. How do we get more women liking science and math? Well, you have to recognize that not many women were in science and math. And you say, well, how do we get them involved in it? And now you have programs that are specific for women in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematical area. So great, we've succeeded at that. I'm not really sure who would not be happy about that.
Right.
But now turn that on race. Okay. So in order to get your African Americans, your Hispanics, your Native Americans, anyone who is not typically represented in any part of education, we look at, okay, how are they being left out? How do they experience it? What are their outcomes? And then how can we make it better for them? And I think it's important to stress making something better for one person doesn't mean making it worse for someone else. Making things better for women to experience their working conditions, equal pay, that doesn't mean that it's worse for someone else. It's simply including them in the greater conversation of academic success or in professional success or what have you.
All right, so here's where I see part of the challenge. There are still some in our society who believe that affirmative action made things worse for them. I mean, it sounds very similar in that regard, that's the fear.
And I hate to say this, but a lot of the people who first start talking about it being a bad thing, they tend to be the reason why we need it. I mean, people who don't want to see African Americans or Hispanics or people of color take a seat in the place of society in America,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't want to see that happen, then it's a problem when it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's important that, okay, let's say women enter the workforce and they're starting to have jobs. Maybe some men who think that only men should have those jobs are going to be upset. So they're the ones who would be upset about women being included in the ability to have these jobs or
Mm-hmm.
equal pay. So really people who don't want to see minorities sitting at the table of our American society like we really are, those would be the people that would speak out first about it. And then they would make it look like it's something that impacts everybody in a negative way. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of people who don't know what critical race theory is. They're putting words out there that have nothing to do with critical race theory, trying to get people to listen out for these words. If you hear diversity, it's a bad thing. It's part of critical race theory. If you hear inclusion of all things, that's bad because it's a part of critical race. It is not bad. It's the outcome of critical race theory, including our kids of color alongside kids who are white. So only if you don't like that would you be against it.
Is that a problem? Oh my goodness, we have so much more to talk about. We're going to take a commercial break. I'm so glad you're here. We're breaking this all down. We'll be right back. Don't go away.